we want to talk about the Amnesty International story that we talked about last week, because it did not take long for them to issue an apology about their investigation on the war in Ukraine. So they released a statement just yesterday. The statement says that Amnesty International deeply regrets the distress and anger that our press release on the Ukrainian military's fighting tactics has caused. Since the invasion began in February 2020, Amnesty International has been rigorously documenting and reporting on war crimes and violations committed in Ukraine, speaking to hundreds of victims and survivors whose stories illuminate the brutal reality of Russia's war of aggression. We have challenged the world to demonstrate its solidarity with Ukrainians through concrete action, and we will continue to do so. So this opening paragraph is saying, look, we support Ukraine. We never meant to hurt Ukraine. We are not saying we are not pro-Ukraine. We want the whole world to support Ukraine. But they go on to say that they do still stand by the reporting that they did, that in all 19 instances that they looked into, they found Ukrainian forces had located themselves right next to where civilians were living, thereby potentially putting them at risk from incoming Russian fire. And they said that they had interviewed people in this area and confirmed that no Ukrainian force had tried to evacuate any of these areas, and that there were, in many instances, empty forests, empty fields, empty parking lots where these forces could have been set up, but they were purposely putting civilians in harm.
Which is amazing that they felt the need to issue a press release. They've never done this before.
Right, and it's interesting.
They've never released a press release apologizing for their investigations into humanitarian and war crime violations. Like, is it their responsibility because somebody got their ass chapped, in America? Like some lobbyists who are donating to neoliberal causes, like we're upset about, oh, you know what? We donate a lot of money to you at Amnesty International, and we're a big liberal funder here, so we can't continue to do that. George Soros, I'm looking at you. Like, we can't continue to funnel all of. They survive on donations. Right. I mean, in the 1980s, I was a fan of Amnesty International back when I learned from Sting talking about Amnesty International, like in the 1980s, because I remember him talking about, he liked how they would focus on one singular thing at a time. They would zero in on something, they'd do a deep investigation on it, and they would pour all of their heart and soul into trying to fix one specific thing at a time. And then everyone was wondering, why are you guys ignoring what's going on in Ukraine? Why has Amnesty International been so silent? You guys are shills. What's going on here? And then suddenly everyone loses their mind last week when they released this international report. They're like, oh my God, they woke up.
Well,
and now it was sort of like cover for the mainstream media could now start writing about it. It was almost like cover. It was like, here you go. It was almost like as if the Red Cross had written something about it. And then everyone's like, oh my God, maybe we should start covering what's the atrocities that have been happening in Ukraine for the last 8 years that we've friggin' ignored.
Right, because anything that's critical of Ukraine is deemed pro-Russian, which again is incredibly simplistic, overly reductive. And so we just can't say it, right?
And wrong, by the way.
Sure, absolutely, it's wrong. But I see it even in our chat, like, saying these things about Ukraine that's critical and depressing is pro-Russian. It's not. We haven't said anything pro-Russian at all. We're not speaking at all about Russian tactics at this point. We're just talking about how these things affect innocent civilian lives, right? And so I'm just curious in this response, who are they apologizing to for upsetting, right? We regret the distress and anger, but to who, right? Because
George Soros.
If you are a Ukrainian and you realize this is happening to your fellow citizens, that they are being put in harm's way by this war, you might feel grateful for this investigation, validating what you're going through, right?
No, yeah, but you're hurting the feelings of Western liberals and liberal elites and corporatists. Not even, by the way, just and not even just liberals. I mean, it's part of the machine, right?
But I want to sort of play it out as if we take this for the value of what they're saying. So we're sorry, basically, if we've upset anybody who is Ukrainian about saying something that we think is true. So then look at another story they covered today, just this one, about Amnesty denounces further arbitrary arrests and excessive use of force in Guinea, right? It seems that civilians are being brutally treated by the government in Guinea. So should they, if I'm from that area, that might be very upsetting, even if it's true. Should they apologize for that?
No, what they should be apologizing for is their lack of coverage of what the United States has been doing around the world. Maybe there's a good start. Maybe the United States should apologize. Look, we're covering what's happening in Ukraine and Guinea, but we're not covering what the United States has been doing in Syria, in Somalia. And oh, by the way, in the United States just stole enormous amounts of oil from the Syrian people and taken over their oil fields. Like, what about that? Or the countless civilians that are killed in war zones. Or what about Iraq or Afghanistan? Maybe that's what they should be apologizing for. Even Grover agrees with that. Who's our dog, by the way. That's maybe what they should be apologizing for. But instead, they're apologizing for a report which anyone who's been studying this and journalists who've been in this area for any length of time know exactly what has happened. Here was the tweet on Friday when they tweeted this out about their article. Amnesty International: Ukrainian forces have put civilians in harm's way by establishing bases and operating weapon systems in populated residential areas. That's, of course, confirmed. Then if we go through the article, I mean, you go through all of these details about, if we scroll through the article, this was the big piece that broke the internet last week. Ukrainian fighting tactics endangering civilians. You can read it on their website. You can go through all of the details on it. I like what Michael Tracy had to say about it this afternoon. Michael Tracy is a good thinker on all of this stuff. He tweeted this today. And he said, this report by Amnesty International is scrupulously even-handed and goes out of its way not to exculpate Russia, whose war conduct it also condemns. But that's not enough for media think tankers who demand adherence to a propaganda narrative, not facts. Bingo, right?
I mean, they say over and over again that we still think it was Russian aggression. We still think they started it. We still condemn Russia for this. But being on the defense, this is what it says in the original report, being on the defense does not excuse you from humanitarian law. And you cannot claim ignorance of this. Like, oh, we just didn't know that we couldn't set up our base in a kindergarten that was in session. Right? There's no excuse for this. They go on to say that they did report these things to the Ukrainian army, but they can't reveal those reports to us because of public safety, obviously. But yes, over and over again, they say, we're not on Russia's side, just so you know.
If you need any further evidence of this, and if you missed our show last week, just to give you some context on all of this, Eva Bartlett, who just left Donetsk, she was there at a hotel that was just bombed. She wrote me the other day saying that she couldn't even get internet access. She had to hide in a closet as the hotel was being bombed by Ukrainian forces in civilian areas. And this was her reporting. They're releasing these little pedal mines everywhere, which are kids are walking up to and grabbing. And here's one of the videos of the pedal mines exploding when a gentleman throws a car tire on it to explode it. These are all in residential areas. Watch this video.
Keep your eyes down. That's the advice walking around Donetsk now, after Ukraine fired missiles containing butterfly or petal mines last night. They litter the streets, parks, apartment courtyards. They are everywhere. And because of their small size and neutral color, they're easy to miss. One fatal step and that's your foot or leg gone.
Yeah, so these are in playgrounds. They're putting them in kids' playgrounds, and kids are going up to them like, look what I found. And not for very long, because it basically instantly kills them. That's what happens. So CNN is now even managing to cover what's been unfolding in Ukraine. And they did a report with Matthew, I think it was Matthew Chance, who did a report on how Ukrainians are now fleeing Ukraine and heading towards the Russian-held areas and into Russia to get away from this aggression. This is CNN now reporting this. Watch.
Waiting and waiting. Families, pets, possessions loading them down. All crossing to the Russian-occupied territory south of Zaporizhzhia.
This is what's slowing everything up here, the deep mud, cars just getting bogged down, sliding all over. This one just managing to get through, and the reason they're coming this way, Quite simple. The bridges are blown up.
Yeah, by Ukraine.
Ukrainian emergency services doing their best to get people through the rain-sodden fields. We've had to drag a few trucks out today, the commander says, but it's drying out and getting easier. Known as the Green Corridor, it's where people cross to and from Russian-occupied territory. But something odd this day, the traffic almost entirely one way. Of an estimated 6,000 people stuck on the Russian side, only 76 crossed. Many, many hundreds went the other way.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
To Kherson,
Why?
because my parents live in Kherson.
Is it dangerous because there are Russians controlling
I
Kherson?
know this, but I must to take from parents from Kherson to my city Odessa.
Everyone leaving Ukrainian-controlled territory telling us a similar thing. They expect to come back, even if it appears they're not. I'm taking my mother to the other side, he says, and picking up my grandmother. When we ask why he is taking his young daughter, he shrugs.
Yeah, because again, they're going and they're staying and they're leaving this area and they're tired of the shelling. They're tired of the attacks and they're continuing to go.
Yes, this report just shows vehicle after vehicle packed full of people saying, just go in there for now. He says later on, you know, if they are, no one's willing to admit that they're going to stay, but it looks like they have many of their worldly possessions with them.
They don't want to admit it
They're
on
taking a
camera.
play out of the old Ted Cruz playbook.
Yeah.
I'm just going for a couple days.
I'm just going for a couple of days. That's right. I'm just going for a couple of days. So, yeah, that's the very latest on Amnesty International.